This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Jim Thomas, partner at Kirenaga Partners. Kirenaga Partners is an early-stage venture capital firm focused on building great businesses from cutting-edge technologies. They invest in early-stage venture companies that have developed products and are on the verge of initial commercialization at the stage they call post-technical validation and pre-commercialization. Jim, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you.
Great. So what was your background before investing in early-stage companies?
That's a good question. I grew up just having politicians as my heroes, and I thought, I can fix all societal ills if I get into government and get the right degrees and the right positions and work for the right folks. So I spent 10, 11 years working local, state, and federal politics, and unfortunately, it took me 11 years to figure out, left or right, I wasn't going to make the difference I wanted to make. So but it was great. Working in politics, you get to see how the sausage is made, and literally you get exposed to every issue under the sun. And so if you don't have a strong opinion, you certainly come in contact with people who have very strong opinions about literally every topic on the planet. So it was a great learning ground.
Great. So what excites you right now?
I think, when I was born and raised in California, loved being there. California is a wonderful state, and especially the geography and the diversity is fantastic. But it got so crowded. I was ready to, by my, say, mid-30s, I was just ready to take off. And everybody at the time, which is kind of funny where you're at today, everybody said, you have to go to Texas and you have to go to Austin. And I did. And, and it was great, but it just wasn't, I wanted to be a little closer to the beaches. I thought, this is a place where I want to do a lot of business. I want to have a lot of contacts. And I kept going. And I never thought that I would end up in Florida, before retirement. Like who goes to Florida before they're ready to retire? And just getting to know the state kind of from top to bottom reminded me a lot of California. And then living in Central Florida and being connected, where I sit right now in downtown Orlando is less than an hour away from Kennedy Space Center. And so it's really, I'm excited about being a part of these verticals, and then being in a state that's, very open for business and very, business friendly. And we say here, a $2 million check in an early stage company actually gets you a couple of years down the road, where in my own state of California, in places like San Francisco, I'd say that'd be about 6 weeks of an electric bill.
Well, great. Well, so you deal a lot with investors and with startups. What's your advice for people investing in startups?
Well, I think what frustrated me, I got to do a lot of great things in Florida. I was just welcomed with open arms. I got to be the president of the Orlando Regional Chamber of Commerce. So I was exposed, here we call it the I-4 corridor. It really is up at, if you look at UF and Gainesville out to Daytona and Embry-Riddle and right on down through the corridor, through Orlando, Space Coast over to Tampa. I was exposed to so much IP and so many great founders and great ideas. What I would do is put them, I'm like, I know enough high net worth families, I'll get these great folks in front of the right families and everything will come together. And way too often they were ideas. They weren't really businesses yet. And these families would ask the proverbial question of, what's your revenue look like? And the answer was always zero or less than zero. But these guys were, brilliant. They had IP on the table, and but it wasn't a love connection. And so that's what I would say to early stage investing by one-off investors is a very difficult thing unless that's your area of expertise. And so that's where I think you need to look for experts. You need to look for a fund. You need to look for, verticals that you're aligned with, or geographies that you're aligned with. And ideally it's all the above.
Well, great. And so on the other side of that table, what's your advice for people running startups? What do you tell them to do before they go out to raise funding?
I think it's to be open. A lot of the, and maybe it happens around the country, but I know a lot of the experience here, there was there was a lot of pride in the whole idea of bootstrapping. Oh, I've been bootstrapping this for 5 years. I've been bootstrapping this for 10 years. And oh, I can't tell you how many pitch competitions I've been to. And we all wear that around like a badge of honor. But at the end of the day, you're like, if your idea was that good, like, shouldn't it be in the market? Shouldn't it be solving problems? Shouldn't you be out there? And it's not just about making money, but it's like, do you want to be a starving, startup founder for your whole life? Or, oh, I'm in startup tech. And you're like, okay, but it's at some point, I want you to be successful. I want you to be so successful that you start, selling these, merging and, being acquired and now having the capital to put back into startup companies and sharing your experience. Don't just stay in the malaise of startup. So that's a lot of the advice we give these days is start those conversations, find out, how much capital do you need to really scale? Do you want to have a scaling business, or are you looking for a lifestyle business? And be very deliberate about one or the other, and either's both. You can make a lot of money in lifestyle businesses. But then start to connect, really talk with people in the capital communities and ask, who funds my type of business? Who should I be talking to? And it's always great, start the relationship. I get email. I got one 2 hours ago. Hey, you don't know me, but here's my pitch deck. Would love to have you invest. And he was like, you're right. I have no idea who you are. But if, 3 months ago or 6 months ago, they'd reached out just like, hey, we're working on something really cool. Would love to introduce ourselves. Would love to develop a relationship with you. Because these days you don't have to, I don't care what state you're in. We have a Florida thesis, but we talk to people all over the place, but really just be a human and get to, build relationships, get to know folks, have a big idea around scaling, know what that looks like. And then if it's good money with good terms, take that early. Our favorite thing is to get, these aren't companies yet. These are brilliant founders with great ideas. And what you said in the intro is we don't want to take risk on the technical side. We want it to be third party validated that what you have is real and it's ready to go, or close enough ready to go. And we'll take risk on the commercialization side all day long, because in partnership with you and with the right funding and access to the right client base, we have the faith in ourselves and with you that we can commercialize you if what you have is real.
Great. Well, you're in the venture capital investing game. How do you see the industry evolving? Where do you see it going? What
I didn't like about, because I was more exposed to California than I was to the New York piece, but I don't think it's that different. But what I saw too much in California was, they wanted to put a lot of money into, huge valuations. Everybody was chasing unicorns. That was just kind of the name of the game. And a lot of that was, we don't have a finance, and people have made a lot of money at this. And so there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. But I didn't like that side of, well, let's just figure it out. Let's get enough users and we'll figure it out. And we'll just keep throwing money at it until it works or it doesn't work. What we're finding in Florida is it's much more, there's nothing wrong with software plays at all, but we find a lot of hard tech. We find a lot of amazing IP. We find these brilliant founders. And what we say is, what I love about the venture space here is like I mentioned, we could put 1, 2, 3 million into an early startup company with good valuations, great terms for the founder. And now if we could take that from, basically the company's worth next to nothing, and now we can bring it into the market. We call it that inflection point. There's no, there's who knows how far it goes. And what if we turn it from zero into a 50 or $100 million company? We don't have to chase unicorns to create massive wealth for our investors, for the founders, this idea of ongoing generational wealth. So that's the piece that I like to play in. And I feel like more people are moving that direction. People are moving to places like Texas, and people are moving to places like Florida, because they don't have to chase these unrealistic valuations.
Well, that's great. And so in the next 5 years, what do you think is the biggest change we'll see in funding startups?
I think it's what I really like right now is this idea, and why I give a lot of talks on this, of how do we share with the up and coming entrepreneurs that the world's greatest problems are the world's greatest business opportunities. Like before, instead of just sitting around and listening to, negative news, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. I think we're at this place where we have so much. I'm surrounded by like 5 screens right here. We have so much access to knowledge. We have access to people. We can find who's doing top level stuff. So why not go after those big meaty issues, regardless of where you live? And I think that to me is you harnessing technology to solve those major problems is something that I haven't seen as much over the past 10 or 20 years. But literally those are the companies that really catch our attention these days. Here's my financial model. Cool. Okay, and what problem are you solving? And you're like, oh, all right, like that's pretty exciting. We say, and where I think this is moving, and it's certainly where we're at, we're not just impact investors, but the investment we make, the bigger impact it has. Guess what? The bigger market it gets into, and the bigger problems that we solve, the more money we're going to make, and the more money, the more problems we're going to be able to alleviate in the world.
Great. So let's talk about your investment thesis. What exactly is it, and what's your criteria for looking at startups?
Sure. So what was fascinating was how I ended up, from California to Florida. The 2 founders of Kirenaga, Dave Scalzo and Terry Berland. Funny enough, Terry Berland taught nuclear engineering when Orlando actually had a naval training base. But they were up in the Northeast, and they were seeing like B-, C+ overvalued deals that just weren't that exciting. And all of a sudden I'm running the chamber, and they come down here and we meet and we start talking about all the opportunities that we're seeing in and around Central Florida, this I-4 corridor, really around the state. But there's so many great universities and colleges in this corridor. And what they came down to do was to connect with the capital community in Florida. And this is 5, 6+ years ago. And the more that they looked around, they're like, wait a minute, there's next to no organized capital. So I started referring, they said, hey, we want to get into pre-revenue companies. We want to lift these companies up. We want to turn them into amazing businesses. And that's exactly what they started doing. So anytime I found great founders, I would send them their way. They came back to me a couple of years ago and said, what if we're closing off our first fund. We're having massive success with it. We're going to start a new fund. And our thesis is going to be around the future is Florida. And what a bold thing that is, and what a hard thing it is to get a lot of people to buy into. But I was already bought in. I'd been here long enough. At the time, I'd been here already 5 or 6 years. I'm like, I get it. Like, this is the richest IP and the most undercapitalized place, I believe, in the entire country. So why don't we build a thesis around investing in Florida-based companies, but then not handcuff ourselves to say we can only invest in Florida-based companies? We were the first professional money into a vertical agriculture company called Plenty, which is now a unicorn, and it's out in San Francisco. And we're like, great, if you don't want a headquarter in Florida, that's perfectly fine. But there's so many companies that we're talking to around the country that want this lifestyle, that want that long runway, that want a supportive ecosystem. And they go, hey, if you fund us, we'll happily move to Florida. And we go, there's so many sub ecosystems within Florida. If you want to be up around University of Florida in Gainesville, Alachua County, beautiful community, wonderful things happening there. You want to be in and around the Space Coast and the vertical space industry, Brevard County, Space Coast, like I said, about 45 minutes to my east, wonderful place to be. Thousands upon thousands of brilliant engineers out there that really were attracted by NASA and now work at, anywhere from Lockheed to Northrop Grumman to Blue Origin to SpaceX. Just super exciting. And then if you want to see the sun go down in the west, go out to Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota, and you could set up shop there, and it's wonderful environments. And then if you want an exciting city, you want that San Francisco of the East Coast, you set up shop in Miami or Fort Lauderdale. They're cool too. I like being in the central part of the state because I can get access to all of that stuff within an hour or two, or, Miami's about a 3 or 4 hour drive for me. But that's really the crux of our thesis, is this idea that Florida is open for business and it's a great place for startups.
Great. Well, you deal a lot with startups and investors. What's the challenge you see most of your startups face these days?
One of the biggest ones, we think, because of this ecosystem, because it doesn't have a large, long history of funding, is they go, I really need 3 million. And they get told no enough times. And then all of a sudden it's, okay, well, what about 1 million? Okay, what about 500,000? Okay, let's just try to get a quarter million. And so we try to right that ship, and we go, no, don't think small. Don't say, I'm going to sell my product into just Florida. Like, let's take you back around and say, we're going to take this nationally. If it's good enough technology, why isn't this scaling globally? And so that's the advice that we give folks here, that I don't think, traditionally California hasn't suffered from big thinking. That's one of the biggest reasons for Silicon Valley's success is, big ideas coming out of Stanford, and it's instantly like, why wouldn't this be global? But there's a cultural piece here that we have to overcome, where people are a little more reserved, and we go, no, let's blow the lid off of this. Like, what you have and what you're capable of is worthy of taken to a really high level.
And then on the other side of that, what's the challenge the investors face in this space?
It's great. That's a great question, especially as it matches up to our thesis. We've had numerous meetings, group meetings with high net, it's not about their wealth. They say to us, we like you guys. You got a great track record. We like the thesis, but we think you're only going to find like 3 or 4 home runs. And you've already told us you're going to invest in 10, 15, maybe 20 companies. We don't think that the ecosystem has it in it. But what's so fascinating is me being on the kind of the front lines of the ecosystem for 10 years now. There's plenty of ideas. Really, it's the hardest thing for us to do is to activate that capital and to breathe that confidence into the investors to say, trust us. Like, there's more companies out there than we can fund. We consider anybody else in the state of Florida, we don't consider them to be competition whatsoever. We happily co-invest. And if we don't co-invest, the better they do, the better we all look. But that's honestly the biggest challenge, is trying to show. And what we've done is we backed up and we said, well, we're just going to demonstrate it. We have a great first portfolio, but now in our second fund, we've already funded 6 companies. There are 6 rock stars, and 5 out of the 6 are headquartered in Florida. Let's go through each one. And they're like, oh, you're like, yeah, and we did that in a matter of months.
Wow. Well, that's great. So you see a lot of different sectors and applications. You mentioned several of them already. If you had to pick 1 or 2 that are at the top of the list for being good opportunities, what do you put up there at this point?
100% at the top of our list is the space as a vertical, both because of the geography and because the scalability. You hit something positive in space, and you see it. The penultimate right now is obviously SpaceX, but what Blue Origin's doing, what Virgin Galactic is doing. But then when you think about space, it's clean water, it's abundant food, it's sanitation, right? It's clean air, it's everything that we have here, but then it's multiplied tenfold, because now you have to deal with it in space and the parameters of space. One of the companies that we're absolutely most excited about, and one of our most recent investments, is a company called Space Perspective, and it's headquartered again 52 minutes from me at Kennedy Space Center. They're taking traditional weather balloon technology, making it jumbo size, making it the size of a football field. They're developing a capsule that you put 8 people and a pilot, so 9 people total. And then it goes to the edge of space at 12 miles an hour. No rocket fuel. And it allows grandparents to take grandkids literally to the edge of space. And what's beautiful about it, and why they call it space perspective, is because you get that overview effect that astronauts talk about from being in space. You get to see the planet from a holistic nature, and we're not looking at countries and borders and this and that. You start to see the planet for its ecosystem, but then you start to see we're this little pale blue dot in the middle of in the middle of nowhere, and how fragile that whole thing is. And so what a beautiful gift for grandparents to give to grandkids, a lesson that potentially could last with them their whole life. So that's space, because of the broadness of what it is, and the fact that we're literally on the doorsteps of space tourism on multiple different levels.
Great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Yeah, I think it's, it's just kind of funny to be, I was so pro California. I still love California. I think there's wonderful places to, build and grow companies in the country. But I've become such a believer that this is fertile land for so many different reasons. And it's almost, it's almost sad to see the state and the opportunity and the ecosystem was moving in such an amazing direction. And then because of the pain that we've gone through because of COVID, it's accelerated all of that. So now a bunch of capital and a bunch of great companies and ideas and venture are coming from the West Coast. They're coming from the Northeast. Literally what me and my partners did 10 years, 5 and 10 years ago, we're seeing that kind of coalescing around here. And it's great. We got great weather. July and August are a little humid, but so's New Jersey. But it's just a great place. People from kind of all over the country and all over the world are kind of converging here. And I feel like now there's critical mass around capital and talent and big ideas. Like this really is, it's a great place to take a look at. And that's what I'd say. If you have an early startup, feel free to reach out to us through our website. Reach out to me through, LinkedIn, I think is just one of a treasure trove these days. It shouldn't be lumped in with traditional social media. Every CEO, every person that I want to talk to, literally I can find through LinkedIn. So feel free to, reach out to us, develop that relationship. Tell us about the big things that you're working on, and we'll share where, what kind of ecosystem, if Florida is the right fit for you, or we always love if it's not a great if it doesn't perfectly align with our thesis or really fit into our portfolio structure, we're happy to be like, hey, I know where you should go, and I'm happy to point you in that direction.
So how best for listeners to reach out to you? Is that LinkedIn or something else? Yeah,
LinkedIn, or my email is james.thomas@kirenaga.com. So you can reach us through the website. We have a form there. Reach out direct. LinkedIn is just, to me, it's a great place to do that, Initial contact and be able to, kind of develop a relationship. Like, hey, is it, this is the stage I'm at. Is it appropriate for us to have a phone call, or can I send you some more information? And I'm always happy to do that. Or like I said, we got so many great accelerators and incubators all over the state. I'd be like, oh, hey, I know people in Miami, or I know people in Gainesville, or, I know people that are working on similar technology. This is a great thing. I'm happy to put you in touch with them. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes. Want to thank you for joining us today, and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
It's great. Great talking with you. Thanks for having me on.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.